Okay, the next thing now is the pseudo class selector. The pseudo class selector select element based on certain states. You get. So let's watch and see what states do you do that. Okay. So they say what are pseudo classes? A pseudo class is used to define a special state of an element. For example, it can be used to style an element when a user mouses over it. Just watch my mouse. Look at what happened. Can you see that I clicked over this and the background color changed? So that's what pseudo selector does. When I remove it, it goes back to normal. When I mouse over it, style a visited and unvisited link differently. Style an element when it gets focused. So let's see how it works. So for example now, the syntax of a pseudo class, this is the syntax, this is how you do it. You understand? You select the element with this sign or symbol, then you name the pseudo class and you give the value. Now there are different kinds of pseudo classes. You get? There are different kinds of, like for anchor element now, you know I told you by default it comes with a color of blue. Now when you click on that color and come back later to it, the color will change. You get? So you can use pseudo classes to like change those things. Yeah. But here I'm not going to dwell much on this one for you. I will use example. When we start a project properly, I'll use that example to give it to you. Like now the link, the color should be this. That's unvisited. That's default color with it. Then visited. Okay, let me try it for you so that you see. Now this is a link. You understand? This is an anchor element. You get. Now by default the color should be blue. You know, even if you try it on your system, you will see it. The color should be blue by default. But there's a way you can manipulate it and change the color to how it suits you. You get. You can change, like here they change the color. They change the color, default color to green. You get. Now when I hover over it, hovering means like I just put my mouse over it. The color changes from green to pink. Now when I click on it and come back, when I click on it and come back, they don't have the option here. Then when I come back, the color will now be blue. So it depends on how you want it to look like. You understand? When we would do a project, a small project, then we'll style it. Then I'll cover this thing. Maybe what I will do is that okay, I'll think of something better. Gakamma, okay, gakamma. So that is off. That is what video class does. You understand? So let's see enwe ihe ọzọ. I think that okay. Enwe pseudo classes and HTML classes. Okay. For example now, pseudo classes can see let me not bore you with this thing. Let me not bore you with this thing. I want you to understand the basic concept first. You understand? Let's leave this thing. When we do a project, when we make a project, you understand it better. Even this pseudo element selector, let's leave it. This attribute too, let's leave it. I'll just the most important thing is just understand this simple selector and combinations. Once you understand them, when we start working on these ones, you won't have a problem. Understand? So now back to our normal, I wanted to continue, but I said let me just explain this one for you. Now back to our normal CSS selector, the one we normally use. Now they have here all key elements. Now the ID selector, they have ID selector, a situation whereby you call the name. You know how to do this one. We have worked on this before. You use hashtag and call the ID and style it. You understand? I'm not going to come back and say do like this, do like this. You already know how to style. You get like text align and all those things. So you call the ID name with hashtag and give it a declaration block of what you want it to look like. Now the same thing to apply with class. In class case, you just use dot center dot. You understand? In ID, you call it by hashtag. If in a case whereby you don't want to call the ID, you don't want to call the class, you just call the element. You understand? Then the next thing now is okay, universal selector. Let me teach you on universal selector. Okay, so what universal selector does, it's and it stack ajeme, it select everything, no exception, everything on your browser, every element. That's what universal. Other e doesn't, you no know whether you be man, you no know whether you be woman, you no know whether you be child, you no know whether you be nwa amụrụ. E select everything and style. So that's what universal selector does. For example, for this universal selector, okay, can you see now, for example, this is an element and ihe niile dịcha n'ime. Then they use this universal selector. They text aligned it to center and they change the color blue. Can you see it? So it affected everything. So that's what universal selector does. Now there's another one, the CSS grouping selector. This grouping selector now means that, for example, now you want to give H1 a text align of center and a color of red. The same thing with H2, the same thing with P. You understand? Instead of calling them one after the other and giving them the same thing, then you just group them together. You group them together and do it. You understand? And how do you do that? You use comma to separate them. That's when you are dealing with elements. Use comma to separate them. You just say H1 comma H2 comma P, then you just call all of them. Text align center, red color red. So that's what group selector does. That's what select. You can still visit this website to check these things out, like to understand it better. So that'll be all for selectors now. That'll be all for selector. We are going to the next thing.